scriptwriter and columnist. Give her a big warm welcome.
First, a big thanks, Tamara, and especially with that awesome, optimistic ending. Yes. I am sort of, taking a back step towards what I am about to say. Because, of course, she set the stage right there. I mean, when we go to the doctor and say, explaining here it's aching there, all the cells are multiplying just in the right way, the blood, dilation is just right, and everything like 99.999% is just right. So yes, I mean, I think that should have been a closure in a way. And so I would try to remember to make sure to repeat that sentence once more at the end. But for now, I'll take you a little bit towards the problem area. And I'm actually in a way happy to see the, the combination of the audience we have here today. Because I wanted to talk about India. For the last 2 or 3 days or 4 days at this World Women Economic Forum, most of the sessions that I chose to attend myself spoke a lot about self, looking inwards, trying to heal ourselves, the power of one, and at the same time, almost in the same sentence, it also spoke a lot about the universe. I mean, sending a message out there, getting it back, etc. I am trying to, hover somewhere, finding a sort of geometric average between the two, and I am going to talk about our country. Some specific things, some not so specific things. Because what I understand where India stands today is perhaps where more developed nations like yours, like many of ours, like many of yours would have stood maybe a generation back, maybe a few decades back. So I would really love to hear back from you at the end of what I'm going to speak, to see what lessons we can learn from you, what lessons, what are the ideas that come forth from the topics I'm going to talk about. Having said that, how do we look at India? When we see India, what do we feel? I think as tourists, which perhaps quite a few of you are, India would perhaps look quite like a fairy tale. Nice places to visit, nice shops to shop around. From where I see, and from the multiple pairs of glasses that I put on when I try to look at India, one, when I look at India from an actuary's point of view, which I am, I'm an actuary and I worked in the insurance sector for long 10 years, I see India to be obviously a very prospective customer base. There's a lot of work to be done. And which is where the state sort of falls as a defaulter and the insurance can fill up. When I look at India from a more economist point of view, which I study economics in university, India is definitely a developing nation, not a developed one. India is on its way. As a feminist, which I am also, India is in a deep crisis. There is no denying about this. There is no two words about this. Every time we try to deny it, we are getting into a denial. From a sociologist's point of view, which is something I am very deeply interested in as I work with several issues in the gender front, I think India is finding its own balance, but at the same time is in sort of a disequilibrium at the moment. There are clashes, even though we always talk about India as very rich traditional values, cultural heritage, etc., and ancient wisdoms. A lot of that is very patriarchal. And we have to come to admit that, to accept that, to be able to do something about it. So yes, India is in a state of disequilibrium. And lastly, if I have been anywhere on my spiritual path in trying to do whatever I can do, I think India is too on its own spiritual path, since obviously ages and hundreds and thousands of years, trying to find itself. And now is a new now that it is all the more trying to find itself. I will actually go into a very typical Indian societal structure. How things work here, and especially from a financial dependence or independence point of view. Because as much as we say that we have found our own equilibrium, we have found our own balance, I took my decision and stand by it. And as much as, is that right? As much as we say that, I have my peace of mind, I chose my life's decisions to be in the office or to be at home, to be beside my daughter's bed or to be beside my ailing parents, whatever I say, it is only circumstantial. And we have to admit that, we have to accept that, and we have to see where it lies. So what I thought is I will begin with a very typical average example, a family structure. two spouses, one husband, one wife. I will just take a very normal average thing. Both spouses have their sets of parents. They perhaps have one child or two children. So what is the exact financial dependence structure in that small family unit? In India, other than the public sector jobs, which again have very meager pension amounts, the private sector jobs have no pensions. The average retirement age is 58 to 60, and I'm sure each of you will agree, and as an actuary I'll emphasize it even further, our longevity is going to go off the roof. By this generation, by the next generation, we are going to live beyond a good 80 or 90 years. So our old age parents definitely are financially dependent. There is little that is done or provided for from the state side. The government really does not have an old age system or the long-term care in the US as you would know it to be, or as an actuary, I actually studied the UK system, the national health system, and in my work I also worked with the healthcare, which unpopularly is known as the Obamacare. So so obviously the kind of state support that is available in terms of if someone falls ill, that is absolutely not there in India, absolutely not. We have less than 1% of our GDP allocated to the health funds, and that is only for the poor and with a long queue, something that is sort of unviable in a way. The young kids, the education. There is very little state education other than for the poor, the midday meal, or for people who cannot go to school, to coax them to school is one thing, but there is no quality young age education provided by the state. So it is actually going off the roof from that sector also. A very significant part of the family's earnings actually going to child education, and in fact the MBA classes and the primary school tuition fees almost equal each other nowadays. Come to the two spouses, the male and the female. Only the very last session, right before this one, actually, she made a very good presentation about the glass ceiling in the workplace. I mean, we cannot talk enough about that. The kind of environment that is that is there. You of course start off with a very, and again I'm talking about very privileged people, not about girls who risked being killed as an infanticide. I'm not talking about that. We are here a very privileged class of people who have been brought up equally as our brothers, and we have got a job in their right time, got married perhaps in our right time, etc. Even then, once you enter the job as a young worker, you are there. First 3-4 years, once you get married, there's a lot of the attrition that happens right after marriage, because the marital home in India is defined as not the spouses alone, but essentially the woman goes to live with the boy's family. And you see there is an immediate conflict of interest. As much as they may like to say that it is all right, there is a conflict of interest as to what they really want. And it affects your motivation level, it affects the things you can do, etc. The share of household duties. I cannot say enough. Obviously, it is a worldwide crisis, and in India, it is perhaps a lot more. The child care, the household chores, everything falls on the woman. Come to that in the workplace itself. If you have not left your job when you got married, after you had your kid, where is the child care facility? Is it safe enough? When I had my daughter, first when I fell pregnant, and I tried to keep that news closed as much as I could for a long time, because I knew what was coming. Most of my friends had to leave their jobs because the workplace makes it very difficult for them to survive. They don't want you to go on a paid leave for 3 months without knowing if you're going to come back, and your requirements will be different. If your child falls sick, you have to take. So they don't want it. If you fight it out, even then, once the child is born, where is the safe child care? You hear all kinds of horror stories around daycares, around the nannies you keep at home. There is no list. I cannot list it out enough. And then, I will just come back to that family structure. Again, if the wife is not working, what are her financial rights? If there is one spouse earning and one spouse not earning, and 2 sets of parents and kids, 1 or 2 or whatever it is, what are the financial rights of the wife? Is it simply maintenance? Is it a say in the financial decision of the family in terms of whether to buy real estate or stocks or something else? What happens if the marriage does not go well? What does she get? What is the division? What is the right thing? What happens in practice? And does it give her a life choice to choose as she wills? Or does it limits her choices? Because you know, with financial abilities come a lot of self-esteem, and without it, you take it away. So where do you get the confidence to be able to stand up on your own feet and do what is right for your happiness? Because if you have to, at the end of the day, depend on somebody else. And what happens to her pair of parents? I mean, this is one question, and why I am coming to this is, very recently there was this one verdict in the from the Supreme Court of India. Very often nowadays we keep getting news of the verdicts on divorce cases, because India is, as I said, at a crossroad. Discovering divorce is obviously a very this generation and perhaps maximum last generation thing. It has not been there for a long time, and now every new verdict, every new case scenario gives us a new area to think of. And very recently there was this case in India where they said that the husband was granted divorce because the wife wanted him not to stay with the parents. So the wife wanted the husband and the wife to stay separately, while the husband wanted to stay back with his parents in the same family home. And since the husband did not agree to it, the Supreme Court gave a verdict of a divorce, going against the wife in favor of the husband. Whether this is right or wrong, because in my feminist group, I run a group where we actually hold a lot of discussion, and I saw most of the people were very vocal about saying that it was wrong, the wife was wronged with. But again, what about human rights for the old parents? If they don't stay together, which is totally understandable. I myself I don't get along very well with them, and the thing is that, my aspirations to have a loggerhead with their, I will be very frank and personal here, but at the same time, what are their financial rights? What is the financial right of the wife? Where do we draw a line, and what are the standards we look at? Where is the solution? And the most problematic area is that we very easily talk about gender crimes. Because it comes in the newspaper, we know what is right, what is wrong, this shouldn't have happened, we go on candlelight vigils. When this comes to our day-to-day familial or social issues, we shove it under the carpet. We say it is a personal problem. Where we go wrong is, we do not understand that personal is political. If it is me facing it, if it is you facing it, if it is you facing it, it is time we talk about it. It is time we don't sort of, it's not a personal shame at all. And this is exactly where, in the last session also as she was talking, I had, just put in this point that maybe awareness. Every time you grab somebody, just talk to them about things that are common. It's not about, washing your dirty linen in the public, but talk about issues that are pertinent and common and real. So what happens is, you see, one person earning, so many rights in questions, so many things at loggerheads with each other. We are all for gender equality, and I am strongly in favor of feminism, and I actually am quite I wouldn't say activist, but a philosopher. I'm open to questions, but I very strongly believe in this. It's my heart's calling. And at the same time, I cannot answer human rights questions from my feminist camp. I cannot answer feminist questions standing in a human rights camp. And that is not what it should be. So, this is exactly where I thought that as much as we say we work on ourselves, we find our own equilibrium, find our own peace, it is time to talk about the real issues, acknowledge their presence, and only then can we do something about it. And what can we do about it? One, I think that a state, as much as we say external factors versus internal factors, what is out of your control, we cannot do anything. And obviously, I'm in no position to, influence the state. But it requires to come from a higher level. The state needs to take care of unemployment benefits, young children education, old age security or support, a kind of mutual, conducive, understandable life choices so that the non-earning partner can get something. There has been a lot of debate around whether a housewife can or cannot be given a kind of a salary in recognition of her contribution in the house? I myself do not know the right answer. Is a wife going to be an employee of the husband? There are many negative points to that. Is the wife going to be left at the mercy of the husband in terms of what money she gets? Again, not an easy question to answer. But I think that a state has to do a lot in it, and at the same time at individual levels, all I can ask for, I really don't have solution. I mean, I chose this topic to talk about knowing very well that I will only be proposing questions, no solutions. But I think it is time that we don't shove it under the carpet as personal. We say we are victims when we are. We don't get defensive to say that, I made my decision to stay with my child. Why? Because my child asks for me and not her father when she falls ill. Why? Because she played with a doll and not a car, because she is a daughter. As children, when I actually, when we go to a toy shop, I ask for a birthday gift. The shopkeeper says, boy or girl? I said, why, Naya? What do I would? And he says, if it is a boy, I will give you a doctor set, a car set, a revolver gun. If it is a girl, I will give you a doll set and a kitchen set. The girls learn to nurture, the boys learn to ride a car. They grow up. The female employee takes time off the meeting and goes and calls, has the baby pooped today. Yeah. The father goes on 3 days of travel very easily without having to ask for permission. And we all get into this situation so easily, we don't even see it with our plain eyes that there is something wrong. We just say it is our decision, I love my baby, I stay at home. Why? What happens if my parents fall ill? So I really wanted to just place this problem, and with due humility I say I don't have a solution, but I wanted to sound out this problem, and really, especially because most of you are from outside India, I would definitely love each of you if you could share your views of what you have seen in your own lives and how things can go in some direction in a way of reform. Thank you.
Good.
So most enlightening and a lot to think about. I have some thoughts, but any feedback from people? Thoughts? Questions?
Question. You're an actuary.
Yes.
What do they do with the dowry? Do you have dowries? And does a woman get her dowry back? Is that how that works?
It's a very important question. That itself can be a webinar session. Actually, in terms of dowry, in India, you must first understand that all the different states of India have very different culture. Yeah. In fact, there are even 1 or 2 states in India which are matrilinear. In the northeast, the husbands go to the wife's house after they get married.
Oh.
So and a lot about dowry etc. also depends on which state your hometown is. Personally, I work in Delhi, I stay in Delhi, but my hometown is Kolkata, which is possibly belonging to East India, one of the more gender reformed parts of entire India. I hear that there is very open dowry cultures in North India as well as in South India, but I would not say that in a way of putting them down or something. It is just what I come to hear from my friends who are from those parts of India. For places also where there is no dowry in terms of cash or gold or cars. I mean, there are some marriages where they'll put up a shining car right outside the place where the wedding is taking place, and everyone comes and clicks pictures, and this is what we are giving to our son-in-law. So that's a very proud thing. Yeah. And there are also subtle forms, like obviously no cash but gifts. What would you want, beta? So yes, it is very much there.
Does it belong to the wife? If you divorce, can the wife say, I want my car back?
No, I don't think so.
So it's really, the husband takes whatever the dowry is, it's his.
Yes.
And it does not go back with the wife.
What I understand on the legal side, what I understand is that the gold jewelry stays with the wife. In Bengal, I know it is something, the Bengali word for it is Sri Dhan. Sri is the wife, Dhan is the treasure. So it is the wife's treasure, the jewelry. But even then, they typically talk about which side gave the jewelry. So if the wife's father gave, or the, so
But yes, in case of cars or cash, it definitely stays with the with the boy's family. Yes.
And the grandparents or they don't have Social Security. The grandparents don't typically have any state-funded stipend to live on. So that makes a difference. I mean, the parents probably would want to live alone. True. Sometimes, unless the mother.
Well, would they? I mean, would they? I mean, that's a question, and because we're really talking about social development here, and Tamara, I think, can kind of probably speak somewhat to this idea of social development through economic redistribution. But I'm curious, would the parents culturally want to live alone if they could afford? You said they can retire around 50, but then they become dependent, right? Absolutely. So would they culturally prefer to live alone?
Yes, they would. See, all our expectations, I hope you would agree, our expectations sort of build themselves based on our observations and conditioning, social conditioning. So even today, even in any kind of discussion forum, we very easily take a moralistic stand to favor joint families over nuclear families. So nuclear families, which is supposed to be husband, wife and kids, is supposed to be a bad word, as opposed to joint families where there is supposed to be a lot of, why I am saying supposed to be so many times in the sentence is not a filler, but is because I don't believe in it. There are a sort of moralistic view around it. In fact, in the urban India, a lot of the families are of course living separately. At the same time, if you are in the same hometown, like for example, as I just said, I come from another hometown and I work somewhere else, so it becomes an easy decision. But if it is not an easy decision to stay within the same place and stay away from the parents, from the boy's parents in particular, I think the boy's parents' subtle expectations would be to have the duties to be done. I mean, cash support is one thing, but care support. If the son is, not even son, the daughter-in-law is there to serve to them. Yes, that is an expectation.
I would actually like to
Yes, please.
Sure. Yeah, so I didn't catch all of your thing, but from a little bit of what I thought, I would just like to share my sense of experience with working in the social sector. This is a little disjoint, but I'm trying to make a point here, right? So I worked with kids with special needs for about 8 years, trying to set up an initiative in our person, right? And for this, we are not an organization that has the bandwidth to really go to a grassroots level, meet a slum person, educate them what a developmental disorder is, and get them. So what we try and do is focus on collaborating with NGOs that actually do that. So we have a very innovative specialized treatment which is beginning to get its due recognition now. So it's taken us 12 years to really establish its evidence and things like that. While we've made huge amounts of impact in terms of reversals of conditions like neuropathy, rheumatoid arthritis and such, to tell somebody innovative, it really takes people to be open-minded to really accept it, right? So the reason, this is a background for me to share. So I went to this NGO when we had started off, this must be 2007, 2008. And we knew what this science could do, what this methodology could do for the kids, and we were like, just give us an opportunity. And they said, madam, we don't have funds. Your funds nahi hai. You understand me. And we said, it's fine, we'll bear the cost and we will do the treatment for free. So we went there. That 1 year was a revelation for me in that NGO. So this NGO is run for children and adults with disability. It's run by a blind person. Anybody who walks into that NGO, your heart will basically bleed, like you would want to do something for them, and it's so sad. This is an NGO which gets crores in funding from foreign funding. So this gentleman who is so-called blind is actually very, I learned a lot from him. The way he kept in touch with us, the way he built a relationship, the communication that he sent was so consistent and so beautiful. So it's not like they didn't have a budget to allocate for various things. They had a physiotherapist who got paid. And 2 years of, 1 year we did the treatment, they saw the change, they were very happy with it, they gave us testimonials and a written letter and stuff like that, and we said, we are a foundation as well, we're not able to bear the cost anymore. You know, it's literally coming out from our pockets and we just don't have it. And can we create a collaborative project and kind of pitch it together? He said, madam, I don't have any money. He constructed a new building. He is hiring a physiotherapist. He's paying them twice as much as we're asking him to pay us. You know, at least cover the cost of the services that we're giving. And he says, I don't have any money. It's so difficult to even get food and clothing and things like that. I really thought about this for maybe 6 months. And then I realized poverty or anything that you talked about, whether it comes to you know, how marriages are done, how women are treated, poverty, is not about how much money you have in your bank account. It's your mindset.
Absolutely.
Because there are entrepreneurs that I have met who have seen days where they're homeless, who have no money. They have nowhere to go, they don't know what to do. But they are sitting in forums like this, giving wonderful, inspirational talks, inspiring everybody, saying that I am here. But you see, there are people like the gentleman, yes, he is having a difficult time, but he's definitely not a poor person.
I totally agree with you, and I would, you know, your discussion actually leads me to share this. First economics class in college. The professor comes and tells us, guess why in India we don't have any famine or any, flood or any, official disasters, so to say. And you know what? In the United States of America, these are the statistics. In the UK, these are the statistics, and we are like, why? Because we do not identify them as that. We are used to it. I think our tolerance is actually pretty high, and that's not a good news.
Yeah.
Just to speak to that really quickly, I think these kinds of discussions are really important because I think there's always a second side to the story. And coming from the United States in a development director position with an NGO, we send the money to the people that seem to have the crores, right? And so often it seems when we have funders, the funders specify it has to go to the physiotherapist, it has to go to the building fund. And so really
would you mind?
there might not be other funding that's not allocated, right? And so, so it's possible that he really was telling the truth. And so, but what we're talking about right now is really important because to have these discussions, it helps to understand both sides, like what it could seem like.
So I understand that, and I'm not making this statement very lightly. It took me 2.5, 3 years of hardcore work. I used to work in an NGO. I'm okay to serve people. We deal with people who don't have money all the time, and we deal with people who have a lot of money all the time as well. And it's taken me 12 years of consistently working with people to understand a funder saying that, look, I have $5. I would like it to go to so and so. It's your hard-earned money. You can put in wherever it is that you want. That's your choice. And if our way of doing it is not something that we can really associate with, fair enough. Everybody has their own way. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about a mindset. I think she got it, but there are a lot of things in our country. We're actually a very culturally rich country. We have a lot of history that we draw from. I am proud to be an Indian, but I do find it easier to talk to people who are not from India for the simple reason that it is very matter-of-fact conversation. And I've had the privilege of having these people from different cultures actually come together and have a conversation. And it's starting how, and especially true in the social sector, is how limited we are sometimes, given the depth of culture that we have in how we're defining our social structure. I feel sad saying this as an Indian today, because if we could draw from, if we have evolved as a society in such beautiful ways, if we could draw that from the objectivity that the West is giving us as a gift, I think we would be proud of who we are. And everybody should be proud of who they are individually and where they come from.
You know,
So that was a
yes, that's a beautiful point. And, you know, I want to bring Tamara in because I think she's got some you know, she specializes in this, and she talked really about the distribution of wealth and the empowerment of people. You know, I think there may be some insights as to how, you know, to advance some of the questions that you're talking about. What characteristics or qualities do you think, well, first of all, I'm curious, are there wealthy in India? You know, the U.S. we have this structure, right, of wealthy people that create and give, right? Do they have that structure in India? Are there very wealthy people that give the way Sorensen, right? And then what qualities, when you talk about your group, what qualities can people in India, would you suggest tomorrow, could, you know, focus on to change, make some of the social changes that she's talking about?
Just a quick reply. So Chuck Feeney, who was the billionaire, actually helped influence Warren Buffett and Bill Gates start the Giving Pledge. And I know that giving and philanthropy is something that maybe has a lot of traction in the U.S. right now. And our CEO at Atlantic was actually doing a world tour to help explain about the giving while living mindset and the Giving Pledge, and was actually has talked a lot with new money entrepreneurs. There is a vast exchange of wealth right now from the older generation to the newer generation. This is just our landscape and what is happening right now in these days. And so everyone's coming up to him and saying, well, why did Chuck decide to do that? Why did Chuck decide on these issues? Why did Chuck decide in these countries? Why was that so specific? What was the strategy behind it? And so it was just an experience of going around and explaining that it's a very personal choice. And actually, as it's gone around, there are now the first South African, Indian billionaires that have started to sign the Giving Pledge, which is to give half your wealth away before you die. Facebook, Carrie Tuna, Dustin Moskowitz, the other founders. I mean, these are all just big names that are slowly signing up to this, and so this is a movement that's growing, but the answer is it is very personal. It's very personal, and you have to look inside your own country and your own values and what's important to you.
But that's interesting because it's so strategic. I mean, this idea of giving, would you say half?
Yeah, the Giving Pledge is to give half before you get.
So that's a very specific strategy that India, you know, may consider, you know, promoting. I mean, that's phenomenal when you think about what half of a billionaire's, right? I mean, that's a catalyst for massive social change. And there's a lot of wealth in India, right? There's a lot of poverty, but there's also, I mean, from what I've seen, extreme wealth, right? And what's the social context around giving and philanthropy for India specifically?
I don't want, sorry, I'll take one moment to answer this. One, obviously, you know, very, very interesting side to the story. In India, obviously there are very wealthy people, there is no doubt about it. I may sound as a cynic. There are obviously people, I'm sure, who are doing good work. There is no doubt about it. But just to share with you one or two small, you know, examples of the other side of the story. There are some very big actors, and you know how big the film industry in India is. So they are perhaps one of the biggest, you know, most richest people. And a few of them in the income tax department are listed as farmers. Because in India, agriculture is a tax-free society, tax-free sector. So a few of them are professionally farmers. There you go.
Well, now that's a very interesting thing. We'll have to come back to that one. Yes, go ahead.
That relates to what I was going to say to Tamara.
Tamara.
You know, I don't mean to be a cynic either, but maybe I am. If you establish a huge philanthropy, that's like a tax-free write-off for your whole estate. So there are some built-in
benefits,
loopholes to the tax system that makes that kind of giving lucrative for the person who's doing the giving. What do you have to say about that?
That's an entire another hour to talk about with the lawyers. I think we're getting motion that we're out of time, but you're right. There's a lot of different sides to every conversation.
But that's not a bad thing. I mean, it could be that, you know, other places,
money is doing some good. I mean, obviously, I totally agree with your point. But even if they are benefiting, if it is a win-win, so be it. Perhaps better than at least, you know, a lose-lose.
That's great. Thank you, Versi. It was robust. So Tamara and Sinjini, thank you very much. We'll give you a very warm applause. Thank you, ladies.